Hi, you're through to the Select Podcast. I can't take your call at the moment, but leave a message. And remember, please keep them kind. Cheers.
Hey Slick, it's Elon. I can't believe I got your answer phone, again. Are you ever gonna call me back? Anywho, well, call me back, okay? Oh, and keep it groovy.
You have tuned in for a Slick Podcast. I'm here to seek the truth. Live from Scotland around the UK. The one and only Slick Podcast. Enjoy the show. Can I ask important questions? No matter how bizarre the truth might be. Tune in for Slick Podcast. Keeping it real, keeping it groovy.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or a very good day to you, when and wherever you're listening from, and a very warm welcome to the show. I'm your host, Simon Murray King. Coming up on today's show, my guest is Sam Mandel, CEO of the Ketamine Clinic, Los Angeles. I'll be talking with Sam about the KCLA's work and the pioneering treatments that have helped thousands of patients and led to an amazing success rate by the KCLA. The KCLA is a world-renowned ketamine clinic specialising in intravenous IV infusions of ketamine for various mental health conditions such as depression, anxiety, PTSD, suicidality, and other mood disorders. Co-founded by Dr. Stephen L. Mandel and, as mentioned, CEO Sam Mandel, who joins us here today, in 2014, KCLA emerged as one of the pioneering ketamine clinics in the United States, with a strong focus on reshaping and redefining mental health care. The Mandels have been at the forefront of utilising ketamine infusion therapy, delivering more than 25,000 infusions with an 83% success rate over 10 years. The use of low doses of ketamine, properly administered by a professional for mental health issues, is having a massive impact on the huge problem facing society's mental health sufferers. My guest Sam Mandel is here today to discuss just how much the ketamine treatment that the KCLA administers, how much that is helping those suffering and consequently is showing amazing results. I think I'll make this point also. The ketamine is not an alternative to traditional allopathic medicine. It is in fact a massive part of it. In addition, all of its staff at the KCLA are uniquely qualified in their field of expertise, and they definitely have a finger on the pulse of the latest innovations to help and treat those in so desperate need. My understanding, not having talked with Sam yet, is the use of low-dose treatment of ketamine could possibly alleviate the need for constant medication that may be masking the actual cause of dis-ease by treating the symptoms only. But I must be careful here. Throwing out guesses or assumptions, as I'm not the expert, could lead to disastrous effects or bad advice. So, with that in mind, and without further delay, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Sam Mandel to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Let's get the ball rolling on this one. Ketamine was brought into the field of medicine, according to my research, in around 1962. And to quote Wikipedia, ketamine is a dissociative anesthetic used medicinally for induction and maintenance of anesthesia, end quote. In layman's terms, Sam, could you explain what this means and how it was used and why?
Yeah, ketamine has been used since the 60s and FDA approved in 1970 as an anesthetic. And to reference, to clarify the quote that you're referencing and in layman's terms, it is induction is putting people to sleep initially at the start of a procedure. Usually other anesthetics are used to maintain the sedation to keep people asleep, but ketamine is used to initially help put them to sleep in the first place, if that makes sense. And it is among the most widely used anesthetics in the world. For many, many years, it was the most widely used anesthetic in the world. And it's a ubiquitous drug, actually. It has a lot of other uses, which I'm sure we can get more into shortly.
Before we get to the unique treatments that KCLA provides, could you talk about your father, Dr. Mandel, co-founder of KCLA, and his specialist field in medicine, and his initial findings or observations concerning the use of ketamine?
Yeah, so I co-founded the practice. Our practice is Ketamine Clinics, Los Angeles. I'm the co-founder and CEO, and I co-founded with my father, Dr. Stephen Mandel, who's president, and we did this in 2014. So we've been doing this work for a decade now. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, one of the first ketamine clinics in the country to offer ketamine infusion therapy to people. His background was really a perfect marriage for this treatment. My father did everything towards his PhD in clinical psychology except for his dissertation when he decided to go to medical school, and he became an anesthesiologist. And so he maintained a personal and professional interest in mental health and became an expert at utilizing ketamine, which is an anesthetic. So when it was found in the early 2000s to be, when ketamine was found in the early 2000s to be a very, very effective treatment for depression and other mental health conditions, it was just perfect for his background, an anesthesiologist who has a master's in psychology.
Would I be correct in my understanding that ketamine induced into the physiological will then treat or affect the neurological?
Yes, it definitely does affect both the neurochemical processes in the brain, as well as produce a experience for patients during the treatment and effect of their psychology or psychological experience after the treatment. So I would say that is correct. And that's one of the things that makes ketamine as a treatment for mental health so effective, is the two-pronged approach, where it is affecting the neurochemistry as well as the psychological experience that people are having, and their ability to have insight, new perspective, new realizations about their past, about themselves, their relationships, the people in their lives, and in ways that are very profound and meaningful for them, that they can then work through in therapy and hold on to and carry with them for their mindset, because the past is set in stone and can never change, but our relationship to it and our understanding of it and our role in it is plastic and can change indefinitely and forever. And so patients are able to reframe this understanding in ways that can be very therapeutic, in addition to a whole cascade of neurochemical effects that are going on in the brain that are actually causing meaningful growth and increased brain function.
So are your patients lucid when they begin their treatment?
No, yeah. So ketamine used traditionally as an anesthetic is a higher dose, as an IV push all at once puts people out and is sedating them more deeply. When it's used as an IV infusion for the treatment of depression or other mental health conditions like anxiety, PTSD, suicidal thinking, it's a gradual low dose that's given over the course of about an hour in our clinic. A lot of places do a 40-minute infusion. Ours are 50 to 55 minutes. So we do a longer infusion, a little bit more medicine, and we get better results. Currently have an 83% success rate. But the amount is low dose, so people are conscious and awake the entire time.
And they're being counseled about their problem, as they're not just having the ketamine and that's it.
Yeah, it's both, as we were talking about prior with regard to the kind of neurochemical process as well as the experiential. So that is why it's so effective, is the issues that patients are experiencing are being kind of tackled from both sides. So ketamine causes a lot of changes in the brain, and I don't know how deep into the weeds that you want to go, but it creates new neural pathways, neurogenesis. It helps to increase dendrite density and connectivity. It helps neurons, cells, to actually communicate better. There's measurable growth in this area of the prefrontal cortex, among others, in the brain. And so it's actually helping the brain to function better. In parts of the brain where people are, depressed for a long time, they actually shrink up, they involute. They actually get less active and physically smaller. So ketamine can actually help to replump up these areas of the brain and increase their function and connectivity in ways that can help to elevate people's mood and function. So from a, again, on the neurobiology of it, I mean, is actually enhancing mood and function through those processes of the brain. But also they are able to gain new understanding, insight, perspective, get closure, and just better understand themselves and their past and the problems, as you put, in their life in ways that are also very helpful to people. So it's both. And with therapy, which is usually done on days after the sessions, which we do not do in-house, but we refer out for and we advocate for. Many patients come to us, already have a relationship with a therapist. It can be even more useful to work through those insights, challenges, thoughts, etc., with a professional over time. Not everyone does that, and people still get really, really great benefits from the treatment, even if they don't do therapy, because of the changes that I've just described. But of course, if they're willing to continue to work through those things and talk with someone who they trust, who's a mental health professional who knows them, they can get even more benefit.
So talking about, you were saying, I don't know how deep you want to go. I mean, I'd like to go as deep as we can, really. If we're talking the development of new neural pathways, that is so, to me, that would mean new ways of thinking, but it would manifest in a physical way, new wiring, rewiring some of the way that we think, literally, through the ways of, obviously, ketamine. A lot of therapists, or a few therapists now, talk about stacking different mushrooms like lion's mane, other sorts of things to cross that blood-brain barrier for neurogenesis to occur. So when you're treating people with ketamine, is that what you're doing? You want to almost to rewire a new way of thinking, to looking at things in a different way. Would that be about right?
That's exactly right. And there are other substances that can help to produce similar effects in this way. And lion's mane is a natural, legal one that is available that can enhance cognition and memory. I think there's things that are unique about ketamine in that it has a very significant impact on many parts of the brain, and it can be much more closely associated with mood than others, like lion's mane, for example. My understanding is that is really good for memory and cognition, cognitive performance, but not necessarily as much for mood. Whereas ketamine is affecting the glutamatergic system and GABA, and as an NMDA receptor antagonist, and has a whole cascade of effects neurochemically that are associated more closely with mood, which is why it is so effective in treating depression, even when it's treatment resistant. It's unique. A lot of the traditional treatments, oral pills like SSRIs, SNRIs, MAOIs, are affecting other neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, but ketamine is affecting glutamate. Glutamate is the most abundant neurotransmitter in the brain. As a matter of fact, it's present in 85% of the brain. All the others combined make up the other 15%. Yet I'm not aware of very many or any major antidepressant medications that have targeted glutamate before. This is very interesting that this is something that has not really been looked at that closely with regards to traditional treatments, yet it is such a significant part of brain function and health. But ketamine does affect that. So that is one of the ways that it's unique. And in terms of rewiring or forming these new pathways, one way of thinking about it, especially for those who like winter sports, is that if you're a skier or a snowboarder, or even you just like sledding, and you go down a run or a hill in the snow, over time it gets tracked out, and it's very difficult not to fall into the same tracks for your skis, your board, your sled, to not go into that same exact path. That's exactly what our negative thinking and patterns of being are like. And over time, when it gets rutted out, we tend to just default to the same thing. And neurons that fire together wire together, and those habits become quite ingrained in us and a part of our personalities. So ketamine and other psychedelic medicines can be like a fresh snowfall, and those tracks are then filled in, and we have the opportunity to then go down the run or the hill any which way we want. Fresh slate.
I read a book. I wish I'd remembered and wrote down the author and the title of the book. But basically, this lady was a lawyer, and she was suffering depression, and she tried everything. She had pills, and then pills for the effect. You'll know, obviously, about this, but for the benefit of my listeners, Sam. So she had pills to treat her depression, and then pills to counteract the effects of those pills, and then some more pills to counteract those. I mean, she was almost, just jangling with pills, the amount that she was taking. Then she took, I think it was like microdosing LSD. I don't think it was like Liberty Cat mushrooms or something like that. It was like LSD. She was microdosing, and I think she carried it through with something like, I think it's like niacin to cross the blood-brain barrier. Now, this was a very high-end, responsible, working mother, and reading the book, she completely changed completely. She wasn't a wreck. And my question basically at the point to you is that by taking drugs, now drugs comes from the Anglo-Saxon word dragon, which means dried herb. So a lot of the pharmaceuticals now are not that, but let's just keep it at that. So by taking pharmaceuticals, we're masking the problem, but treating with ketamine and other things like that, you're not masking the problem. You're rewiring, you're fixing the problem. You're not trying to cover up the symptom and block what actually needs to be addressed. Would you agree with that, or could you throw some light on that?
Yeah, absolutely. What you said is correct. And, the situation you're describing with this woman is, one technical term for it is polypharmacy. And it's very, very common in the United States and in other parts of the world today. I'd say it's probably the absolute worst here in the US versus anywhere else in the world. And it's people taking large numbers of drugs, and often, as you described, they require additional drugs to deal with the negative side effects of the drugs they started taking for the prior whatever issue in the first place. And it's a vicious cycle, and it is really causing a lot of serious health issues for a lot of people, and they just kind of get stuck in it because they're not really sure what else to do at that point. And it's really socially acceptable, and it's acceptable within our healthcare system for people to be on a lot of drugs. And it's just the way that it is. It's really terrible, though. It's producing very bad health outcomes and very low quality of life for a lot of people. And the only people that really stand to benefit from it are the people who make and sell the drugs. But there is a paradigm shift happening. There is an awakening where people are realizing that this has failed us and we need more. And that's why ketamine and other psychedelic medicines are being researched in exponential ways. And finally, we're allowed to do some research on them where it was forbidden, since these drugs were interdicted by Nixon, Reagan. And, it's all moving in a positive direction, but it's moving slowly. But there's definitely been a lot of gains over the last couple of years. And, to the other part of your point, yes, ketamine and other psychedelics are getting at the source, at the root cause of these issues. They're not just treating symptoms, where the traditional treatments are really just kind of covering up symptoms. And so that's why there's really significant change in healing that can occur, and really, long-lasting changes that people can benefit from, sometimes from as little as just 1 or 2 treatments. I mean, in the studies with MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for PTSD, and for those who don't know, MDMA is essentially Molly, or the active main ingredient in ecstasy. People just associate it as a street drug that's for partying, but MAPS has been pioneering research and getting approval for it. Rick Doblin has been working on this for probably almost 40 years at this point. And it's finally going to be, all things going forward as they should, approved by the FDA for clinical use this year, which is huge. But in the MAPS studies for MDMA-assisted psychotherapy, in their phase 3 studies, they had people who took 1 dose or 2 doses and had with complex PTSD and had no instance of PTSD 6 months later. A substantial number of people. Forgive me for not having the exact number off the top of my head, and I don't want to make anything up, but I think it was like 60 or 70%. I mean, an enormous number of participants who had not only were just better, but were no longer diagnosable as having PTSD 6 months later. There is nothing that we've ever seen like this before. So yeah, we're talking about really serious, meaningful rewiring of the brain. It's absolutely incredible. Everything else is you take a pill every day, and if you stop taking it, it stops working. And when we talk about working, the results are really generally pretty mediocre. People might feel a little bit better, but they're not thriving. We're talking about a paradigm shift here where people are able to actually thrive.
I think one of the best examples of the use of alternatives like psychedelics, which has really, really bad press, because they seem to think that most people who use psychedelics would have long hair and flares and just want to get out of it, man. And that is not the case. That is not the case. And just one example before I get to my next question for you would be the use of psilocybins or LSD for the treatment of cluster headaches, aka suicide headaches. Named that because people have committed suicide because these headaches are just so debilitating. And there's many treatments for things like they're called, hang on a minute, my brain's just gone a bit blank. I'll get back to the treatments, but there's many treatments for these cluster headaches, but the only thing that really seems to work is people inducing microdoses, not like a trip, but a microdose, and it will either allay the onset, or they won't be as bad, or it will just stop them in their tracks. Have you heard about that? I mean, as in cluster headaches, have you heard of that affliction? Because it is an affliction.
Yeah, I have, and I've heard through the Netflix series on Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, had an episode about LSD, and one of the study participants that was interviewed in that was someone who suffered from cluster headaches, and he said that LSD was the only thing that ever brought him any relief. And he had a larger dose, though. I don't believe it was microdosing. He had actually participated in a trial where he had a full-on kind of experiential dose and had really amazing results from it, total and complete relief for a period of time. So yeah, I mean, there's a really, really amazingly long list of afflictions that can be benefited by psychedelic medicine. And I think what we're seeing is these different issues are, all really symptoms. They're not all that uniquely different from one another in terms of what's going on in the brain, whether it's, issues from trauma, whether it's, that are manifesting as anxiety or depression, or, different manifestations of a lot of the same core issues. And psychedelics have the ability to just help improve the brain function and our relationship to our pain and to our issues, whether they're physical or psychological, in really incredible ways, and to provide actual healing.
The word I was looking for was tryptamine. That was the word I was looking for. You can get treatments that will you can either get an injection, those subcutaneous injections. So for my listeners, subcutaneous is into the skin rather than intravenous into the blood. It's subcutaneous. You can get these pens that you take, or you can get like a wafer, and it will contain tryptamines. And I believe that tryptamine is a naturally occurring substance, so it'll stop the pain. But look into it or don't look into it, up to you. But it's a real thing. But my point was, psychedelics stop the problem rather than treat the symptoms. So for the benefit of my listeners, if I'm stamping on my foot and I ask my wife for an aspirin, she'll say, well, I can give you that, or you can stop stamping on your foot, because there is the problem. So let's just move on here. So the people that come to you, just touching on a little bit of what we talked about before there, if they are, am I using the right word, clinically depressed, and maybe you define that first, and they are on heavy medication, do you have to advise them to stop their medication first, or can you carry on or begin the treatment?
Yeah, we treat people who have a diagnosis for depression. So it's not just somebody who's having a rough day or a rough week or feeling sad. Someone's actually dealing with clinical depression. We also treat PTSD, anxiety, suicidal thinking, and other mental health conditions as well. But depression is definitely the most common.
And would you have to get them off their initial medication before you begin the ketamine treatment, or can you just begin the ketamine treatment and they'll naturally come off their other pills and potions as a result of that?
people are not required to stop taking the medications that they're on. If they want to continue them, there's really very, very few, if any, contraindications. But a lot of people do want to reduce their overall medication load or eliminate it, and so we can help them with that. We have psychiatrists on staff who can help people wean off of meds or simplify the regimen if that's something that they would like to do, but it's not a requirement.
So you can begin the treatment regardless of what medication they're on. So could you talk about the patients that come to you for treatment? What are the afflictions that your team treat, or should the term be dis-ease?
Yeah, as I mentioned, mostly depression. We do see, comorbidity where people are dealing with more than one issue or diagnosis, but depression is usually the primary. Different forms of depression, so major depressive disorder, bipolar depression, postpartum depression, etc. All different manifestations of it, but ultimately depression, and then anxiety as well, different forms of anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Different forms of that as well, and then suicidal thinking. Now, usually, if someone is suicidal, that's not a standalone issue, right? They're depressed, so severely depressed that they're suicidal, or dealing with such extreme PTSD that they're feeling suicidal. So that isn't really ever just on its own, but that is I make the distinction because it is a separate thing that we can kind of treat, even though it usually is coupled with another condition. So sometimes people with depression who are suicidal actually find that their suicidality disappears before their depression does. So it is a separate and distinct thing. I just want to clarify that. We also see some patients for pain, but really very, very few. Ketamine can be very good for CRPS, for complex regional pain syndrome, which was previously known as RSD. And it can be very effective for certain patients who are dealing with true neuropathic pain. There are other mood disorders. Sometimes we see OCD. Sometimes we treat substance use disorders, eating disorders. But the others I mentioned are really usually the primary.
Let's go back a couple of questions. Just to clarify, are your patients lucid, so they're completely aware of what's going on around them when you're treating them?
Yes, I would say they're definitely altered by the medicine. They are not, totally sober, for lack of a better word. I mean, they definitely are feeling the effects of the medicine, but they are conscious and awake. Yes, and they are aware they're having an infusion and of the experience that they're having.
Now, obviously, we're not going to name names. Could you think of an instance where somebody came in that was really up against it, and a massive success story that really struck you? I know you worked there; you're the co-founder, but
yeah, I mean, there's been so many, and I would encourage any listener to go and look at our Yelp or our Google reviews and read real heartfelt testimony from people. We also have a testimonials page on our website from patients, sharing their experience, videos of patients sharing firsthand accounts. And there's been, we've provided over 30,000 infusions over the last decade. We've treated more than 6,000 patients. So there's just an unbelievable amount of inspiring stories of transformation. If I were to pick one off the top of my head, I would say we had an older gentleman who had an eating disorder. He was anorexic. He had been to all of the best eating disorder clinics all around. He was someone of means, and just was not able to get any real relief, and was essentially starving to death. We took care of him, and he started to regain a healthy appetite and a relationship with food. He started to enjoy eating again, gaining healthy weight, took his wife out to eat. Food became a much more enjoyable and balanced part of his life, and he became healthy again. His mood was increased, and he was just really an active husband and participant in his family, and really thrived. And this was someone who was literally, starving to death and had tried everything. So I would consider that a huge success. This was actually somebody who came to us during the height of the pandemic, when we remained open throughout the pandemic. And I had mentioned him as an example of, before he started treatment, as an example to our team in a meeting actually of why we were staying open during this time, that people like him really couldn't wait to be taken care of. We needed to be open to take care of our patients. And I'm so pleased that he ended up having a great result, because we have an 83% success rate, which is remarkably high, but that still leaves about 17% who don't benefit. And there's no way of knowing in advance whether or not someone will benefit. And so just in reference to him as a reason to continue to do this work during very, very trying times, I'm really, really grateful for the wonderful and really life-saving results that he experienced.
The ketamine itself opens the door, as it were. And then along with the team, they will help the person who is going through depression or anxiety or post-traumatic stress disorder. Really easy to say, but I mean, it's a huge subject, whether it be a firefighter, somebody from violent crime, or somebody from the military, but it's a massive, massive subject and the treatment of it. But the ketamine itself just basically opens the door.
Well, I think, we talked about some of the really meaningful changes that are going on in the brain. So I would say that's a little more than opening the door. But what people, to your analogy, I mean, what people then do with those changes, yes, is ultimately up to them and is very, determinant of what will come next. So, it's about the ketamine and the care. So the ketamine on its own isn't magic. It's not a perfect fix, and it's not the whole story. It's one really powerful tool in helping people to get better and return to wellness and have a healthy and happy life worth living. But they definitely need to participate in their own care, and they need to receive good care from providers and professionals. So it is more than just giving the ketamine. But the ketamine does produce really profound changes. And the therapeutic component, the therapeutic relationship, the actual talk therapy is also very important. We also advocate for the pillars of wellness and for patients to really focus on what they can do on their own, like a healthy diet, a good sleep hygiene, talk therapy, good fitness, interpersonal, intimate interpersonal relationship with a peer, among other things that we advocate for to make sure they're just, having a more holistic mindset around their health and wellness.
We will be right back after this message.
Watch this.
Please keep them kind.
Yeah,
Cheers.
It's a slick podcast and we keeping it real. We keeping it groovy. It's the food for your thoughts, so you know we
Please keep
ain't
them
losing.
kind.
We just trying to hit
Cheers.
the top. Every topic you choosing, simulate the mind frame. We just helping you use it. Feel
Please keep them
it's a
kind.
slick podcast. Thanks for tuning in, cause we're here to see the truth. Yeah, we doing it. Life in Scotland, around the UK. Pressure what do you say? No matter how bizarre we answer it, yeah, it's the new way. Slick podcast, come enjoy the show. Keep it real, keep it groovy. Always how we roll. This is passion. Slick podcast, this is passion.
Please keep them kind. Cheers.
Slick podcast. The Slick podcast. Yeah, it's a Slick podcast. Truly unforgettable topic. This is Slick podcast.
Talk to me about neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to repair or redirect synaptic pathways, and how ketamine, properly administered by obviously your team, will induce this process to help it along. But can we just define that neuroplasticity?
Well, it's essentially the brain's ability to form new connections and new pathways. And the brain is not set or fixed in its connections. And those connections can be changed and new ones can be formed really at any time as we grow older and as we age. That activity is reduced dramatically than versus a younger and more actively developing brain. But what we're finding is that certain habits and activities can help to encourage neuroplasticity throughout the course of someone's life, even as they age, and certain substances can really help to promote it, such as ketamine and other psychedelic medicines. And that's new connections in the brain.
Are you finding more more demand, as in people coming with different problems, such as, say, like dementia? It's not just the old, obviously, but with dementia, do you treat that sort of neurological degradation? Is that the right word?
Yeah, degradation. Yeah. There's some very interesting thoughts about dementia and ketamine's ability to help with that. I'm not aware of a lot of research that's been done or results that have been published on that. We generally don't treat conditions that we don't see a basis for in terms of evidence-based and clinical data on. But I do believe personally that there's tremendous potential there because of the way that ketamine affects the brain. And we've already seen that as a unintended benefit for things like TBI, traumatic brain injury, where someone came to us to treat their depression or their PTSD, and they had a TBI, and they noticed that their actual brain function was enhanced, like their memory and their cognition was enhanced in addition to their mood. So we've already seen that anecdotally, but we definitely need to prove that out with research. And I hope that, if there isn't already some, I believe there's some that's ongoing. I'm not an expert in that area, but I would hope that there would be more soon, because there's a lot of potential there, in my opinion.
Ketamine hasn't been explored 100%, or even psychedelics. But I mean, they've got huge potential. But are you seeing a rise in people with anxiety, depression, PTSD that you would have done for, was it 14 years your clinic's been up and running? Have you seen a massive rise, or is it just hasn't gone up, hasn't gone down, it's just the same as it was?
Yeah, so we've been around since 2014, so it's been 10 years now. And these rates of depression, suicide, anxiety, substance abuse, they've all skyrocketed over that time. I mean, they just continue to go up, and away. And it's really terrible. And it's clear that what we've been doing up until now has not been working. And that's why we really need, and there's a growing demand for new solutions that work, like psychedelics. And I'm hopeful that they will be able to put a meaningful dent in that, at least to slow or hopefully even stop and reverse the increase. Over the last 20 years, we've seen the suicide rate go up exponentially. And, even during the pandemic, instances of depression, anxiety, substance use disorders or substance abuse, doubled and tripled. And a lot of people are suffering, and there's a real need for solutions that actually work.
On the KCLA website, you mentioned that working with psychedelics could be a possibility in the future. So obviously increase some of the benefits I know of, as we've talked about, with treatment of cluster headaches, addiction, PTSD, as you've talked about. And there are therapists actively using psychedelics for end-of-life treatments for terminally ill. As I understand, it's a course of treatment to alleviate fear.
Yeah, I think it's amazing work that people are doing with, palliative care, hospice care, end-of-life issues. And that's a very interesting area of study and of people doing work with ketamine and other psychedelics. I don't personally have experience with it, but I believe in it. I think it's really wonderful. There's interesting research that's being done, and there are people who are using it in the real world to help people who are dealing with a terminal illness to find peace and make peace with their situation, to disarm their fears and anxieties around death and dying. I think many people have those kinds of fears and anxieties. Obviously, those who fear that their death is very imminent, that's a really huge part of their life, can really dominate their life in negative ways. And ketamine and other psychedelics can help to bring closure and to help people to feel more connected to themselves, to their loved ones, to the universe around them, and to just enhance their understanding of what it is to pass and what might come next in ways that can be really, really beautiful for them.
I talked about the bad press that LSD or Liberty Cat mushrooms have. If somebody was to said that they take them, let's say, for cluster headaches. So as a clinician yourself and your father and your team, has it been an upward hill battle trying to being able to use ketamine and other psychedelics? Do you see this moving forward? Now, the conspiracy part of me would say big pharma doesn't want this to happen, but let's put that aside. But have you found it as an uphill battle trying to get access to these medicines which work, which absolutely work? They don't dull the symptom, but they work. But have you found it an uphill battle to try and move your knowledge forward when it comes to psychedelics and other medicines that would benefit everybody?
Absolutely. Yeah, just to clarify, I'm not a clinician. I'm the co-founder and CEO, but I'm not a clinician. But,
Okay.
working in the space for a decade and creating the practice, I definitely know a thing or two about this work. But, as far as your point, yeah, it's not really conspiracy theory stuff. I mean, the reality is ketamine is starting to take away a little bit of market share from big pharma and from these other drugs and medicines that are frankly less effective, more expensive, produce more negative side effects, and it's a threat to them. And it's something that they have put a lot of disinformation out about and tried to bash and in the media and put down and make out to be dangerous, and have had a real, opposition to. And the reality is it's such an effective treatment and there's such a great need. It's continuing to become more and more mainstream, and the science is irrefutable. There's over 200 clinical trials proving the safety and efficacy of ketamine for mental health, and dozens of them are peer-reviewed at leading institutions. So the data is just too strong to continue to try to manipulate and ignore and point out why it's not good enough, though some people are still trying to do that today. And I think they definitely tried to slow down or block the introduction of other medicines and other psychedelics. But of course, then there's, big pharmaceutical houses that are looking at how they can profit on it and seeing what new agents they can come and create that they can own and have a patent for and charge, high markup, make, good margins and profit on. And so in that way, I guess some of them might be able to help to move the field forward, but I don't really fully trust the way a lot of them are going about it. Obviously, profit over everything for them, and not what's really best for patients and for the betterment of humanity. So, and then some of them want to own all the IP. Like there's companies out there, they want to own psilocybin, for example, and have it be just theirs. It's just ridiculous, something that's been found in mushrooms and used by indigenous peoples and people all over the world for literally thousands of years. And they want us to know this is ours and we own it now. Ketamine is a cheap generic drug and the patent is up, and there's no one entity that can say it's theirs. So the margins are low. And so that's one of the reasons why no one's been enthusiastic about really bringing it to the masses. When I say no one, I mean no big pharmaceutical manufacturer or company, because they couldn't ever really make any real meaningful money on the sale of it. So they're focused on the drugs that they have high margins with.
Very sad that be the state of affairs. I kind of thought of it that way, but it's in this country, in the UK, we now have, we're allowed to have CBD oil, and that helps a lot of people with Parkinson's, feelings of anxiety. And there's two people actually I know from different ends of the country that were offered by their doctor medical cannabis. So it is definitely moving forward. I wouldn't say alternative medicine, because I think that these particular types of medicine, whether it be cannabis, whether it be mushrooms or something like that, this was old country doctor stuff back in the day. And I'm talking before the First World War, probably. This sort of thing was, and then your big pharma moved in and try to sew it up and take it all for itself. But if something works, it works, and people shouldn't be, I mean, obviously people shouldn't be given ketamine, just take it whenever you want, just buy it over the counter. I don't agree with that. Or, just take this bag of mushrooms, you'll be fine. No, it must be controlled. But at the same time, if something works, it can't just be swept under the carpet.
Yeah, I completely agree. And by the way, just to take a step back with the big pharma, Janssen developed esketamine or Spravato, that Johnson & Johnson acquired them. And that's essentially ketamine nasal spray that has to be given in the clinic. And they did get a patent on that. And they weren't able to get the racemic mixture and the IV route, which is the safest and most effective, under their umbrella, but they were able to basically take just the S isomer, put it in a nasal spray, put some other regulatory requirements around it, and then say, now this is ours and we own it, and charge a huge, huge markup. That's 300 times the price of the actual medicine that we're giving. And that's going on now in the States. And so, I mean, yeah, it's really sad that the system is not designed at all to incentivize what's going to do the most good for the largest number of people. It's for, who can make the most profit and have the most control. And it's a really bad one. In the United States, we spend more on healthcare than like the next 10 countries combined, but we have some of the worst health outcomes. I think that says a lot. To your point, yeah, these drugs aren't for everyone. When I say these drugs, I mean ketamine and other psychedelics. They're not for everyone. They're not a magic bullet. They're not a magic fix. They don't work every time, but they are extremely effective in healing for most people and extremely safe for most people. And they should be available. And there's no basis to restrict people's access to them just because it doesn't put money in a small and select group's pocket.
I suppose if people didn't, if we didn't have the KCLA clinic, there'd be a lot of people on the at the pharmacist, or the chemist as we call them here, the pharmacy. There'd be lots of the queues will be bigger to get their pills, and then the pills to help with the side effects for those ones and that. I mean, if you're treating from 10 years, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, that's hundreds and hundreds less people to be getting regular doses of goodness knows what. And it's not a big pharma bashing. That's not what we're having here. We're just saying the way it is. That's fine. It's not a conspiracy show. But I just think thank goodness that your clinic, if you're saying it's an 89% success rate.
83%, and we've seen
83.
Thousands, not hundreds. We've treated more than 6,000 patients. We've provided more than 30,000 infusions, and an 83% success rate. And yeah, look, I'm not interested in bashing big pharma. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of medicine that really helps and saves lives that's out there that wouldn't be around if it wasn't for the people who are developing these drugs. It's very expensive, time-consuming, and risky to develop a new drug, to bring it to market. The FDA approval process can cost, hundreds of millions, even up to $1 billion or more than $1 billion with a B. So look, it takes a lot of smart people, a lot of hard work and money to do this stuff. So I definitely don't want to sound like I'm just saying it's all bad. However, I do think it's really important to point out that money is the motive, that things that help people are not always made available or always legal. Things that can do the most good are that the things that can do the most good are not the things that are widely spread. The things that are widely spread are the things that the people who make these drugs can make the most money with. And that is the reality. So, that's fine. It is what it is, but let's call it what it is.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. No, I agree. There is a lot of good medicine that comes out of the pharmaceutical industry that saves our children and prolongs our lives. It's not all bad. Absolutely not. But what we're talking about, you and I are talking about, and everybody else listening to the show, is use every tool in the box, not just one. Use every tool in the box.
Well, people need to understand the way that the system is set up. A lot of people just don't really get it. They don't know. I mean, for, even when I was a kid, at least, I thought, organizations like the FDA were out to do the most good for the country, and the US. I thought that was their mission. That is not their mission. And anyone who thinks that is very naive and needs to wake up to the reality of our healthcare system. And the doctors also, doctors get their information about drugs and treatments from the people who make those drugs and treatments, from the people who stand to benefit by them being used. That is who is educating our doctors. So doctors are then prescribing and recommending accordingly. So even a doctor that's well-meaning or cares is often not even getting the latest or greatest information about solutions for the conditions that they are treating. And it's their responsibility as a physician to go and look and seek the latest and greatest. But a lot of them are busy and they're overworked, they're burnt out, and they're getting the information they're getting from these other sources that stand to benefit by those drugs and treatments being used. Also, they're going based on the insurance model. So insurance is really controlling what is being done in this country, because it's really ultimately what they're willing to pay for or not willing to pay for, and how much they pay is dictating the care. So a doctor is going to want to do something that's going to bring in X number of dollars for him, for his practice, for his organization, rather than something else that might actually be better for the patient, but not bring in as much money. So again, it's terrible. The incentives are just really badly structured, and it's not to blame doctors. It's not to blame big pharma or any individual person or entity. It's just to say that this system is a really bad system. It's great at making a lot of money for a handful of people. It's not great at helping to heal people who are suffering.
That was really well put. I absolutely 100% agree. In this country, the GPs, the general practitioners, the doctors, if you will, they only have a set amount of time really to see individual patients. So they can't really be involved on a massively personal research level. And I suppose this week, some rep from some pharmaceutical, there's a lot of colds and flu going around. I recommend you give them this. If they looked into it, they might have something else. Actually, rather than give them a course of this, give them one of these and that's it. Job done. And that's just a metaphor, just a metaphor. But yeah, there's no, I'm just going to come out with it. There's no profit in doing the right thing, right? So if somebody comes to your clinic, the KCLA clinic, and gets treated once, twice maybe, and that's it. You don't see them again. I'm done. We're finished. I don't need long-term medications. I'm talking about a perfect scenario here. What the advice I'm getting, and I always go to the chemist at this day, and I always get my 4 bottles of pills, and I'll be back next week. That's the problem I have with it, because there's no profit in doing the right thing. It sounds, my dear listeners, that we're bashing the pharmaceutical industry. I personally not. We as a species, we'd probably only be a third of who we are now, right? So it's good. Modern medicine is good, but it's the way that it's presented. The most profit, you must have this one. The most good, we can forget about that. That's just kooky. All right, before we move on, just comment on that if you don't mind, Sam.
Look, a lot of the time that's the case. And I think, we've, I point out kind of my perspective on that and the incentives being misaligned in our system in the United States. And yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, in our case, we want people to come back less often. We want people to actually be, I don't want to use the word cured, because what we offer is a treatment. It's not a cure. And we make that clear to people. But we want people to be healed. We want them to be healthy long term. That's our goal. And there's no shortage of patients. The depression is the leading cause of disability in the United States. It's the leading cause worldwide. I think last time I looked at the figures, it's estimated that more than 300 million people are suffering from depression worldwide. So it's no shortage of people. We don't need to have a scarcity mindset that we have to hold on to every patient and milk them for every dollar they have for life. We can help someone actually heal and be happy for years off of one series of infusions, and there's plenty of other people who need help. So we don't need to have them come back every day or every week or every month just to be able to keep our doors open. And I think there's a scarcity mindset and a greedy mindset among other practitioners at times, and among the big pharmaceutical houses. They don't want people to heal or get better. They want them to take their drug or their treatment every day or every week or every month for life. And that is what is motivating to them. That's what's exciting to them. That's not exciting to us. What's exciting to us is doing the most good that we possibly can. And by the way, I'm not anti-money or anti-profit. I am in a for-profit business. I want to continue to make more money, but you don't have to do that at the expense of people's health. That's the point I think I would like to make.
I like that. But my point was that there's no profit in doing the right thing. You could make far more money if you work for the other side. So on that note, it would have been easier, I'm guessing, for your father to spend his career as a doctor, eventually getting the gold watch and a good luck retirement handshake. So there must be more to this. Why have you both worked so hard founding the KCLA? What was your motivation? Because I'm thinking you both put a lot on the line to build what you have now. There are a lot easier ways of earning money. So that aside, what sparked the passion you clearly have, and what continues to drive it?
Yeah, and by the way, before I answer that, I just want to clarify. I would like to actually say that I think there is profit in doing the right thing. I think the system we have in the United States is not structured to reward that, but it's possible. And I want people to know that. I want people to know that we are profitable and we are doing the right thing, and that there are ways that you can kind of break outside of the mold to be profitable doing the right thing, but I think a lot of people don't believe it's possible, or they're enmeshed deeply in a system that makes it extremely difficult. You have to kind of change, you got to play a different game. Playing that game that we're all in isn't allowing for that, but you can change the game. And so I just want to point that out, because I do believe that you can profit by doing the right thing. And I would love to see more people do that. It isn't a matter of choosing to make money or make profit or to do the right thing, and you have to choose between those two. I think that's my point exactly, is that we're not choosing. We're having our cake and eating it too. We're doing both. We're helping people in ways that we feel are right and just, and also we are profiting. And so I think that's important to point out.
I think that's very honest of you. My analogy would be, why can't everybody in the world have food, housing, and free medical care? Because there's no profit in doing the right thing. It's better to keep people where they are. It's better to have people pay for their medication. It's better people that's extreme. That's extreme.
It's great for a select few people to be able to have money and control. It's the greed of those people.
Right.
The reality is there is plenty of resources to go around for everyone. We could literally end world hunger, and there would still be an of money and food for everyone, and the people at the top could still be distinguished as having more than everyone else and still have power and money, and everyone else would still have more. But that's just the way that the system is, and the way individuals are. It's greed, really. I think ultimately at the end
it was an extreme example, but I take my hat off to you. Obviously you're a business. But back to my other question, there's far easier ways to earn money. And I know both your father and yourself are both passionate about this. So talk to him about that then. Why didn't you just go around the ordinary route? And I'm glad you didn't, by the way. We're all glad you didn't. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I love to hear you say that, because I think sometimes people from the outside looking in think that this is an easy way to make money. And, we see people who get into this field thinking that, and that it's just a way to make a quick buck or whatever. It's trending, or it's something that's kind of a new, interesting thing they want to jump into. There are much easier ways to make money. This is not an easy way to make money. I think it's important for people to know that, or a way to make boatloads of money. Yes, you can make profit, but there's a lot of ways to make a lot more elsewhere. This is really difficult. This is very high touch. To do this well, to do it the right way, you're dealing with very, very tough situations with people dealing with depression and suicide, patients that need a lot of time and attention and individualized care from licensed professionals, from a whole medical team. The facility, the office being really pristine, clean, quiet, safe, all of the safety equipment, all the policies and procedures, the regulatory climate in the United States, making sure that you're in compliance with all the laws, the rules, the regulations, very complicated. You have to pay a lot of money to lawyers to help figure things out and manage liability. And the list goes on and on and on and on. So it's complicated and difficult if you want to do it well. And that's what we're committed to. So why are we dealing with all that when we could be doing other stuff? We're really passionate about mental health and helping people. We have people in our family who are struggling with mental health today. Still, multiple people very, very close to us, both my father and I. People very close to us who we've lost to suicide in our family, among our friends. People have struggled with addiction, our own challenges over the years, and the fact that there's really not any meaningful solutions that we've had up until now. So to be able to do this work, to be a part of the solution, to helping people to get, really meaningful healing is very inspiring. It's very gratifying. It feels great to be able to be part of that solution and be doing that work. And it's personal for both of us.
That was my point, really, because your father was already established in his field as a successful doctor, and he could have just worked out his career. I know he's a relatively young man still, but he could have quite easily worked out his career, quite easily got the golden handshake, and then retired to a condo down in Miami somewhere. But just the passion, you both dedicated your lives to helping other people. And you've already said, yes, of course it's a profit. Why would you do it for nothing? You can't at the end of the day. But because you have passion, that is the difference right there. Because you're making it personal, because you're drawing on personal experience. And for want of a better term, you give a crap. That's the thing, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely, and I'll say my father is still very healthy and active, but I would actually say he's not still such a young man. He's in his retirement years. He could have retired. He did risk everything as a physician with a successful practice already, to
Mhm.
do this kind of radical new thing that was controversial and frankly still is, but was extremely stigmatized and controversial at the time that we started doing it. And so, yeah, there's a genuine passion and care in it. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I just on a side note, I've known probably about 4 people I can think of that retirement killed them as much as a car crash. It's not exactly the most. It's a great dream, retirement, but if you just choose to do nothing, it can. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've left this question to one of the last because I wanted myself and my listeners to get to know you really a little first. So, and you briefly touched on it. So then, what is the mission statement or long-term goal of the KCLA? Because we know it's not profit. So, what's your long-term goal then?
yeah. I mean, the main goal is definitely to provide evidence-based innovations in mental health. To be a part of a paradigm shift in the way that we approach and treat mental health in the United States and throughout the world, and to help to continue to pioneer, the latest and greatest innovations and to make a meaningful, measurable difference in people's lives. And we do intend to make some profit along the way as well while we're doing that. It isn't, again, either one, it's both. But the profit comes second, the people come first. And as a matter of fact, the more good you do, the more value you add, the more that you help people, it just so happens that that is correlated with the money that you make.
Just as a side note, keeping your finger on the pulse on latest innovations, but do you look to other places as well? Let's just say, for instance, like South America. Would you personally be willing to go and visit with an organization or like a country shamanistic healer that's healed people with psychedelics, that sort of thing? Do you look towards that sort of thing as well? Or is it just clinical studies?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of indigenous peoples doing work with plant medicine and the treatments that you can, receive all over the world. And yeah, Mexico and South America are particularly notable for that. And there's a lot of really great anecdotal healing that's happening for people. I would say it's a little bit more iffy because it's not regulated. A lot of those things are not really evidence-based. You have to be very careful about who you're going to because there are a lot of, kind of scams and frauds and, people that are just trying to get money for medical tourism. But there are absolutely people that are doing amazing work. We do tend to be more evidence-based, but we also recognize that there's things that are helping people to heal that are not really fully fleshed out, and they should definitely be an option for people. But again, it's just really important to do your homework there. So, yeah, Ibogaine or Iboga. I mean, there is some clinical research being done with that, but it's not available really in the U.S. But there's, you could go to Mexico, and Iboga is, extremely potent and powerful for treating a wide variety of conditions. It's extremely powerful psychedelic, and that's just one example. Obviously, ayahuasca is another that people are probably familiar with and known to go to the Amazon or the jungles in South America and do that and sit with shamans. And, there's people I know have had really horrible experiences with that or have been virtually traumatized by it. And then there's people who have gotten amazing healing from it. So really just depends, there's no one size fits all. And it really depends on who you are, what you're looking to achieve, and then how you want to go about it.
I think it's also important to establish if there's a problem. So somebody that, let's say, air quotes, is normal. Let's pretend there was somebody that's actually normal, right? Shouldn't go looking for a cure if there's nothing wrong, right? So in my opinion, that allopathic medicine, so the average medicine that doctors around the world practice, should go hand in hand with the new frontiers, as it were, because even though it's old knowledge, really psychedelics, I think, have a massive or could have a massive hand-in-hand impact on allopathic medicine. But I do think that people shouldn't just think, oh, I'll just take this then. If there's nothing wrong, then leave it alone. What would you say about that?
I would say that there are definitely risks to taking these medicines, and they are not for everyone, and that there is definitely concern around people who are seeking to just have an altered state instead of focusing on an altered trait, who aren't really willing to do the work, or who are looking for a quick fix, who don't have any real diagnosable issues, and then might actually cause more problems for themselves by dabbling. But at the same time, I think that psychedelics, including ketamine, have the potential to help people to evolve and to heal, even if they don't have a clearly defined problem. I believe that these medicines can help most people to gain insight and perspective and connection to themselves and to others and to the world, and open their hearts and minds in ways that are very healing and beneficial, even if they aren't, air quotes, sick. So I definitely believe in their potential for that. In the US, because of the regulatory climate, we really need to be focused on using them for an actual illness, a diagnosable condition that's treated and identified, and that's how it is now, and that's how it is with the law. But outside of that, I definitely believe in the power of psychedelics for bettering humanity, period.
Right, last question before we wrap up then, Sam. They say that prevention is definitely better than cure. There are psychological disorders that are genetic or induced by trauma. Those aside, could you give us some advice about looking after our own mental health day to day and also that of others?
Yeah, it's much better to maintain wellness than it is to try and achieve it when you're at a deficit. And small daily acts and daily habits compound over time, and they can help to produce really exponentially great results for you, or they can, bad habits and bad things that you do on a small, bad acts, so a daily can actually produce exponentially negative outcomes for you over time. Some of the things that I would tell anyone to do is, just as we mentioned, we tell patients to really focus on those core pillars of wellness. So good sleep hygiene, good nutrition, good fitness, get some fresh air, some sunshine, spend time in nature, participate in talk therapy. Therapy is not just for sick people. Therapy can be very valuable for, I think, virtually everyone. Have an intimate relationship with a peer. Really embrace your friends, your family. If you have issues there, maybe create new relationships so you can have meaning and connection in your life in that way. That's directly correlated with life expectancy and with happiness, is having close relationships. A lot of people are isolated and lonely, and that's having a lot of negative impacts on not only mental health, but on physical health. And there's a great connection there between the mind and the body. And those are some of the things I would recommend to people. Like I said, fitness, nutrition, sleep, relationship, talk therapy. Those are the pillars. You can add other things like that to that list. You can add meditation and mindfulness and all kinds of other stuff. But those are the really core things. And if people take good care of themselves in those ways, they're going to get a great benefit from that. It might not be the whole. I'm not saying that that's just a magic fix for everything in their life, or life will be perfect. But those are really important things to focus on. And I would say ask for help. If you're struggling to do those things, or to find the right motivation or structure, or to break bad habits, if you're struggling to make friends with people, or to get good sleep, or whatever your issue is, that there's good things that you should be doing, but they're hard for you, inquire for a solution and seek professional help if you need to. But don't ignore those things, because there's no pill or treatment that's going to fix you or your life if you're not actually actively working on those areas of your life. And I think that more holistic approach is really, really important for people to recognize. A lot of people want a magic fix. They want to take a pill and everything's great. Unfortunately, there is no such thing. So those are definitely things I recommend that anybody look at. And then again, if they're really still, say they're doing those things and they're challenged, or they're having a hard time doing those things, ask for help from friends, family, get professional guidance, seek evidence-based solutions to help you to be happy, healthy, and successful. And, it's a journey. It's not a destination. It's a daily practice. We all have to take care of ourselves every single day. You can't stay clean on yesterday's shower. This is an ongoing thing. So, put practices in place that are sustainable. Don't try to do extreme things for one day or 1 week and think you're going to be set for life. You have to set it up so that it's sustainable for you to live a happy and healthy life with daily habits. And also life can suck sometimes. Life can be miserable and painful and difficult, and we have loss and challenges and setbacks, and that's okay too. Life is not all honky-dory every day. It's not all beautiful, butterflies and roses. And while we can strive to have a life that has more of those days than not, it's unrealistic to think or expect that would be, the goal or the expectation for it to be like that every single day. And so I think there also has to be a willingness to embrace the difficult times as well.
I like to think that embracing the things that make us most uncomfortable, done often enough, are no longer those things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only way out is through. And a lot of, I think, pain and suffering comes from avoidance. And what you resist persists. And only through facing our challenges, our fears, the issues in our lives can we overcome them and get past them. And, if something is bothering you, you can change it. And if you can't change it, you can remove it. And if you can't remove it, then you should accept it. That's really the three options that you have with any problem in life. Change it, remove it, or accept it.
Yeah, sound advice. So before we wrap up then, I was talking to Matt Landman on my show last week, and I said to him, now you can either say no comment. It's not a problem. It's just as you're experiencing the thinking of people, psychology, that sort of thing. Anyway, we're talking, and I said, I saw this advert on a social media site, and it advertised, and now this is about contact. This is about human empathy. All right, this is why I want your opinion, or not, up to you. And I saw this advert on this social media site, and I hoped it was a spoof. And it was advertising virtual friends. And Matt said to me, no, it's far deeper than that. You can get virtual girlfriends and everything, all this sort of thing, and all the connotations to that. And I thought to myself at the end of the show, we could see in the next few years people with serious, vulnerable people, serious relationship breakup issues, like you do in the real world, with real people, but through virtual, I don't know, maybe they haven't kept up the money for, let's make up a site, virtualgirlfriend.com. And I thought it's a very, very, because there's no substitute for human empathy. I am completely against that. I just think that's a really bad idea. Talking to people is the only way forward, whether you ring, in this country we have the Samaritans, you could ring them as anonymous or reach out to someone. But in my opinion, getting a virtual girlfriend, a virtual friend is a very dark, slippery slope. Now, if you want to comment, go for it. If not, then we'll just wrap up.
Yeah, I think it's dangerous in the way that you can say that if someone has pain, you can give them an opioid. But we've seen what that's done with the opioid crisis and people getting, hooked and having bad health outcomes as a result of that and dying in mass numbers. I don't want to say it's as dangerous as opioids, but I think it's similar in the sense that, there's this problem of the loneliness epidemic, and people are trying to find out how we can have some solution. And one of that is artificial intelligence and virtual friends or girlfriends. And so someone says, well, a lot of people are really isolated and lonely, so let's give them an AI girlfriend and that'll help. I don't think that's a good help in the way that giving somebody Oxycontin because they have some pain is necessarily a good thing for them. Acknowledging that opioids have their place in treatment, but I think you get my point as far as the analogy. I think that there is a real serious problem with loneliness and isolation that needs to be addressed. I don't think that artificial intelligence or these virtual friends or girlfriends are the solution to it. And I agree with you that it's a Band-Aid and it's a slippery slope and a dangerous one at that. I'm sure there could be some applications maybe where it could be useful, but I don't like it. I think it's kind of a dark art, if you will.
No.
It has a lot of risks. I don't think there's any substitution for real, authentic human connection. And I think that those people really need help and support on building healthier and sustainable lives and relationships, and just kind of putting a Band-Aid on it like that is not the answer. And I also do have a lot of concerns about what that means for our future, because, with things like Meta and the development of VR, virtual reality, augmented reality, and AI. I mean, I don't want to be living in some weird, sci-fi world where people are literally spending their entire lives in some digital reality where they work and live and play and date and socialize all in a headset. I want the real thing. I want to be out in the real world with real people. That's how I want to live. That's how I think it's a healthy way to live for all of us. And I definitely fear that, more and more we're moving into a world where there are going to be a growing number of people that are spending most or even maybe all of their time in this fake world. I don't think it's healthy.
No, I concur, because my thoughts were, if you had this girlfriend, and we'll wrap up in a minute, but if you had this girlfriend or boyfriend and they were perfect, Sam, they were perfect, they looked beautiful, they agreed with everything you said. Everything you said, they made you laugh. They were your everything. And then suddenly, I don't know, you couldn't afford your account to carry on. Then suddenly they're gone. That to me, for a vulnerable person, is like giving extra heroin to an addict. It's a big no-no. And I'm not a psychologist. I'm just a person. In fact, forget the just. I'm a person, and I just see a really, really dark place. And we should just reach out to people. I've said it on my show before. If you can reach out, then reach out to the show or somebody. But there is no substitute at all for human empathy, because I would question as well the motivation for the KCLA clinic. Motivation is helping people first. Yeah, you make a profit, yeah. But if you're talking then inanimate, self-aware thing with no empathy, then I question the motivation. And maybe we should leave that there. But that's what I think about that whole subject. I think it's a dangerous, dangerous one to go down. It's not a help, it's a hindrance.
Well, I agree with you. And also, giving somebody everything that they want all the time is not real life, and it's not a real relationship. And so if, an AI partner is, like you said, perfect, making you feel like you're perfect and laughs at every joke and never does or says anything that would be, different from you or in disagreement with you, that's not a real healthy relationship, and
No.
through disagreement and other points of view and perspectives is how we actually learn and grow and evolve as people. So, I think it could definitely be a amplifier of negativity in the way that social media can be. Social media can really connect people and help free exchange of ideas and information in ways that are great. But it can also be very detrimental by creating these echo chambers where people who are liking and engaging in certain content end up getting fed more and more of that same content by the algorithm, because the algorithm says, well, this is what they want to see, so I'm going to give them more of it. And then they just see really the same point of view and the same information on the same stuff from the same people. And you get in these echo chambers where you're getting a very, very skewed view of the world and kind of getting the same messaging repeated back to and validating your biases. That's not healthy. I think that's been a really negative impact of social media on the world. I could see that happening, here too, in this kind of virtual relationship field.
Yeah, because if you're being told you're the best all the time, and you never hear a no, when you get out to the real world, let's just say somebody of much younger years that have never ever known not to have this sort of thing, you're not going to take being told no very well, are you? If you're being told yes all the time and everything's perfect, and then you get into the real world and you get told no, one of those things. I just thought I'd ask you, Sam, and I've read a few of the blogs and bits and pieces. And I thought, do you know what? I think because of the show the other day, I'm actually going to ask Sam that. He'll either say no comment, or like you are now. Sorry, carry on, Sam.
Well, I'll just say one last thing, and then because I'm not an expert in this area. I haven't studied it. I'm just giving you my opinion, right? But like you said, also in addition to the other things we've mentioned, if somebody runs out of money and they can't pay for their account, that could be like equivalent to like a death, for them, the level of loss, right? And or they could resort to more desperate things to try to get that money to keep the account going. And also, what we've seen in the crypto space and with any kind of rapidly developing new field or industry, new companies crop up overnight and they fold overnight too. They go out of business. So say you have a company that is got a big footprint in this area, they go bust or they close or they get acquired or whatever, and they change their offerings or their offerings suddenly stop. That's another way that I think it could be really, really detrimental to a lot of people's health. Or if they get hacked and then somebody wants to try to take advantage of the users through these artificial relationships, so that now there's trust and maybe even love there. And then, this AI is maybe trying to manipulate somebody or scam them or something like that, with a hack, or the company goes under and so the service is discontinued, or they run out of money. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios that we could come up with that could be pretty dark.
That's us at the top of the hour, and I've really enjoyed our conversation here today, Sam, and greatly appreciate the time you've given us also. Before you go, could you remind us of your website and where people can learn more about the valuable work that the KCLA are pioneering?
Yeah, thank you, Simon. It was really a pleasure to speak with you as well, and definitely a very interesting conversation. We touched on a lot of different stuff. I'm Sam Mandel. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Ketamine Clinics Los Angeles. We're located in Los Angeles, California. We have one location here at this time. And if people want to learn more, they can go to ketamineclinics.com. That's KETAMINECLINICS.com. Consultations are free. Inquiries are free, confidential. There's no reason not to reach out and see if there's anything we can do to help you or provide you with information about mental health treatment.
Sam Mandel, thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
And that was the KCLA interview with its CEO, Sam Mandel. As a side note, during our conversation today, I mentioned the book. The title I've just remembered, It's a Really Good Day, written by, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing her name correctly here, Ayaletta Waldman. A great read, and the subject matter is absolutely relevant to the topic discussed here today. In a nutshell, then, Ayaletta Waldman, at the time of writing the book, had worked as a federal public defender in the US. She was a wife and mother of 2 young children, and during this particular point in her life, was on all sorts of pills for depression and anxiety. Consequently, also, was their linked side effects. Sam mentioned in this cascade effect, or at least about this cascade effect in our conversation here today, as polypharmacy. So then, through the use of microdosing LSD, probably the best known of all psychedelics, she was able not only to break the chain of this pharma dependency, but also ultimately led Ayaletta to regain herself. In my opinion, back to being oneself has huge benefits as our natural state of being, and as such, those benefits are legion. I can't recommend this book highly enough. If you have the opportunity, then I think you should definitely read it. I just know you'll be very glad you did. A Really Good Day by Ayaletta Waldman. So then, back to our episode today. I'm so glad Sam was able to come onto the show today, as his schedule is all about the KCLA and the importance of the work and, of course, their patients. What I took away from our conversation here today was that the use of ketamine and other substances which would have the effects of, or are in actual fact, to my understanding, psychedelics could, if properly understood, researched and used, could absolutely change our world. I've read many books on and articles about microdosing and its positive effects. Fun fact, according to more than one article I've read, high-end white-collar workers in places such as Silicon Valley are using psychedelic microdose regimes to produce out-of-the-box thinking and innovations, as well as the benefits such as Ayaletta would have experienced. I myself use mushrooms in my daily intake of the medicines and preventatives I think I need. These, I will state here, are not psychedelic in nature, but nootropic. That is to say, some of these I take are used to enhance memory or to benefit my cognitive functions. You heard the word neuroplasticity. Well, that as well. I take chaga mushroom, which is a massively powerful medicine. I certainly recommend for you, my dear listeners, looking that one up. Chaga. I take birch polypore, lion's mane, and reishi mushrooms, also daily. I'm not advocating that we should all start tripping, but I am saying that there seems to be a slow gathering of momentum, a shift of thinking towards a massive benefit to the provable effects, the beneficial effects these substances are having. Believe me, my fingers are crossed that a meaningful renaissance descends upon our knowledge of medicine, not as a replacement to our proven allopathic medicine, but as a valuable addition. Okay, and yes, I know I opened the box and took out the cyber relationships subject again. I just thought, what a great opportunity to ask someone of Sam's background their opinion and voice my very real concerns of the massive damage to individuals and to our society at large that this concept, if fully enacted, will definitely have. Okay then, back in the room. Click on the link below to learn more about the KCLA, meet the team, and find out about the great work they do. Again, I'd like to thank Sam Mandel for coming onto the show today. I really enjoyed our conversation. And of course, I'd like to thank you, my dear listeners, also for attending this cast. If you enjoyed the episode, give it a like and subscribe also if you'd be so kind. Leave a comment below or send the show an email, theslkpodcast@gmail.com. But either way, please keep them kind. You can find the Simon Laurie King podcast on all the usual platforms, as well as Universum, YouTube, Apple, Buzzsprout, etc. And so, my friends, it's time for me to go. Until next time, stay safe, be happy, and certainly not afraid. Bye.
Slick Podcast. Keeping it real and always keeping it groovy.